do that, but as we all know, that was kind of coming out of COVID, so it's really great to see everybody here, and hopefully that there's a great enthusiasm that will build to continue bringing Alliance back to where it was. As a vendor, we love Alliance, and hopefully as an institution, you love it as well. What we view our job is to bring you interesting content based on the solutions that we build, so that whether they may be relevant to you. And to that end, I'd like to do just some intros, and then I'll just tell you a little bit about who we are, and then I'll stop the sales stuff and we can get to the heart of the matter. My name is Hendrik Baden. I'm building CY2 in the US. Those of you that don't know CY2, I can say with all confidence that they're arguably the top campus solutions consultancy and solutions development company in EMEA. 40 plus customers, hundreds of projects. If you talk to the people at Oracle, they'll say really good stuff about CY2, and because we all use campus, we believe, and the market is telling us that the solutions that CY2 have developed are relevant here. And so the plan is to build a U.S. operation. I'm the first person, and as we grow, then this will become sort of a fully functioning business unit. I'd like to introduce my partner, Ernst LaHaye. Ernst is the managing director of CY2, and you've been doing PeopleSoft since like 1899, 2005. 2005. You have beat by 5 years. Also, Elmer Makor, who's one of our principal consultants, works with a lot of our customers across the pond. And then in the back, Stefan van Liemt, also senior director at CY2. But I'm actually most excited, even though I love you guys, I'm most excited to introduce one of the two U.S. graduate schools that we couldn't mention when we were doing the description of the session. Pankaj Bedekar from California State University, Northridge, who is managed the due diligence evaluation and now the implementation of our admissions management for two of the graduate schools, separate graduate schools, different PeopleSoft instances, right? I think for the Tseng Business School and the Credentials teaching program. So we actually have a customer here who's deep into an implementation, and hopefully, if you have any questions, you can get it right from a customer. For those of you who don't know CY2, as I said, done a lot of projects. We're focused on solutions development. As you can see, we've done sessions on all of these. The last one now being admissions management. And for any of you that are interested from U.S. institutions about what that might mean, I'd love to talk to you whenever. So I think that's it.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, hello guys. Thanks. I'm skipping this one. I like to start with the why, like always. The admissions management solution that we created is actually built on the basis of at least these four philosophies. The intent to actually reduce effort for the admissions teams, the intent to improve the actual admissions process, the enablement or the empowerment of applicants in the process as well, and let's say the last one, because is for me important in the sense that we believe in general that building out solutions means using what's available in campus solutions and tweaking it or extending it where necessary in our view, or where we think it's actually smart to do so, but to use as much as possible standard functionality. I simply honestly don't have the time to actually build all the stuff myself, and I actually also feel it's a waste of time and a waste of money from institutions to actually have to buy solutions next to a solution like Campus Solutions if you already actually have the license for campus. So we're focused not just for admissions management, but for all the solutions that we do on utilizing functionality in campus, utilizing frameworks that are available, and then actually putting our little magical sprinkles on top of that, where we actually then become a admissions module or a continuing education module or whatever. So if we look at the solution as such, it actually consists of a number of things. It consists of application forms based on templates to enable you to actually create different application forms, as many as you like, for different populations. We all, I think, try to get one business process, one form, one way of actually doing a particular process like admissions, but in general and in practice, in the end, you end up with different application forms for different people and different programs and plans and campuses, etc. Simply because the reality is that you're not always asking the same questions, and the reality is also that not all your departments actually want the same thing. And instead of actually having to fight those, it's easier to have a template-based solution so that you can actually create as many templates as you like. Same counts for the recommenders. More and more institutions are using a form of recommendation to actually pick out the students that they actually think are the best, and also that are recommended by others to be the best for the school that you're actually focused on. So there's a full set of recommender functionality in the solution to actually allow these people to also actually do their recommendations online in PeopleSoft. Utilizing standard functionality, we are actually flowing from application to admissions to students. And one thing which is, again, something that we actually not only try, but I think we achieve in our solutions, is to be as configurable, flexible, and extendable as possible. I don't believe that I know everything at all. I know many people think that I know a lot, but I actually notice every day that I don't. So in that sense, for me, it's really important that people can actually configure and extend things themselves within their own business context. It's just actually something which is otherwise either I have to think about everything, which is impossible. Look at Oracle trying to build a student cloud that can do everything. It just takes years. And the other part is actually it doesn't allow people to actually be specific where they would like to be specific. So configurability and extendability is something that we actually really try to build into anything we do. We built the application forms, which is part of the admissions module in this context, on Campus Solutions, as mentioned. It is utilizing Oracle Fluid and AAWS on the back end. So from a web service point of view, or sorry, from a data delivery point of view, we're utilizing AAWS. And we're also utilizing new user registration framework to actually send the data in and out of the UI, and then we're using Fluid to actually visualize the application forms, the recommender forms, and everything else on the screen for the people that want to use it. Because we're using people tools, and because at least, let's say, institutions using PeopleSoft have normally people available to actually build out stuff themselves and actually, or configure or use us to actually extend the system on and define the things that they want in their own way. It actually is using PeopleTools technology for everything that we do. If you look at the architecture behind the whole framework, in the end we're utilizing a login framework, which actually is consistent of new user registration and the ability to actually get your password back when you actually have forgotten it, so to say. On the admissions framework side, we're actually managing attachments, communications, and AWS with Fluid Applicant Self-Service as well, which we've actually tweaked a little bit to actually be able to actually manage attachments in a far better way, I would say at least, than Oracle delivers by standard. And then we added on top of that login pages, application form pages, recommender pages, and are now currently on our way to actually also create a whole agent portal so that agents can also actually log in on behalf of the applicants that they represent and actually do their applications and manage their admissions process with them. I'm going to demo in a moment, don't worry. If you look at the actual pillars behind the framework, therefore, it is login, which actually is managed by the user registration framework by Oracle, application forms supported by AWS, and then admissions supported by self-service applicant self-service in Campus Solutions, which we've actually done some tweaks on to actually enable what we wanted to do. It's really been about architecture, as said, process, and user experience. The intent is really to actually create tools for you guys to actually be able to easily work with, for users to use easily, to have as much as possible front-end driven, configurable frameworks that people can actually use without having to go back to IT constantly, and with that actually being able to support the processes that are running in the organization. Already introduced some of our clients, California State University Northridge, currently implementing the solution for St. College and the credential programs. University of Glasgow, running with the process, we're running with the application forms for the last, I guess, 5 years now. Schema Business School in France, but also in Asia and also in South Africa and also in America. A business school that actually runs campuses in all of these different continents, and therefore actually has pretty specific requirements in regards to, let's say, questions, forms, recommender functionality for the different countries. Asia, again, agents, very important in that part of the world, so to say. So a lot of extra functionality that they have actually added to the whole framework because of the fact that they actually needed to manage those particular types of programs. Small but specific. Also, a Belgian university that actually manages a small number of students, but actually has quite some specific functionality added to the whole model for them as well. And then there is others, but yeah, these were, for me at least, the ones which stood out because they actually were examples of how flexible the solutions need to be to enable people to actually work with them all over the world, so to say. As a quote-quote prep for the demo, so to say, and to explain what the framework actually does, the intent of the whole process is, of course, to have the applicant complete an online application form as quickly as possible, hopefully. Then to actually check the submitted forms and check documents that are actually attached to that. Have feedback by the administrative user in regards to whatever has been filled in, both on the document level as well as actually on the information in the forms themselves. And if, and you will see this as well in action in the demo, if attachments are not actually deemed okay, they get returned to the applicant. Applicant gets informed about the fact that he needs to go into self-service. He can actually upload a new version of the document. That gets refreshed in the records of the student. Checklist gets updated, and therefore the student actually is interacting actively with the administrative staff in regards to these checklists, to these attachments. And once all the checklist items that are on the list for this particular student are filled in or are ticked off, then we can actually accept the application and continue towards becoming a student. I think we've skipped this. Better. I like PowerPoints to explain people things, but I would rather actually show things to people. So I need to put my glasses on, otherwise I can't see a thing. But so close that and make that a little bigger so we can actually read this. Voila. So Our application form is in Campus. So at this point in time, you're already actually connected to Campus Solutions. You're just actually on a public page that actually you have to either create your account on, or you actually sign in as an existing user, which you can also do, of course. And then you can start your application. Now I just need to grab the user, because otherwise so we let people actually sign in with their email addresses, which we actually hook up to their user accounts in PeopleSoft once they are created, for them to be able to actually sign into PeopleSoft both in the application form itself as well as in normal PeopleSoft using their email address. What happens in the back end when you actually see the word redirect there is that we actually sign the person in and actually become the actual applicant who is going to apply for a program or multiple programs. An overview of the applications that are actually ongoing or have been posted and are actually now in process of admissions are shown on the overview page. There's also the ability for an applicant to actually fill in a new application. And I didn't want to bother you with the whole application form, so I wanted to actually show you some of the pages and actually speak something about it instead of actually having to type in everything for you. So one of my nice colleagues has actually created this beautiful application form and filled in all the data in the last days to actually give you a nice overview of the possibilities of the form. Anything you see on this page is configurable. The colors, the labels, the titles, the descriptions, the texts for the explanations, the fields that you see, what's required, what's not required, what's visible, what's not visible, everything is configurable through the front end of the system. I like to call it, it's page and field configurator on steroids. So, and we created this before page and field configurator actually existed as a framework within Campus Solutions, but the intent is about the same. We actually enable the functional end user to really configure the pages as they like using a front-end setup screen. So, just to jump over a few of the pages here, of course, an introduction page. Let me just do this for us before we. Personal data pages, either one or multiple names can actually be entered for the person. It was interesting to hear Steve Braun actually speaking this afternoon about the primary name configuration changes, so we'll be including those in the form as well at some point. Other personal data, we're absolutely not showing everything that's on the page because I actually felt that was far too much information to give, but in essence, this kind of thing is actually loaded onto the personal data page. Same counts for the address pages, where you actually have one or more addresses that you can configure and actually define what you would like to do with those. Same for phones, same for email addresses, same for things like Skype and other types of social media questions that you might like to ask for people on their form. Work experience, very important, at least on my end of the ocean, very important for graduate programs. What is your work experience till now? What have you done? Where have you worked? Did you actually do volunteer work? Did you do an internship? And then, for instance, in this context, actually, okay, giving the student the ability to actually create a work experience. And of course, if it's already in the system and we know who this person is, all this data is coming out of Campus Solutions into the form, can be altered by the person or added to and then actually saved back into the database. And the nice thing with that is, if I say saved back into the database, the nice thing I at least feel with the AAWS framework is we're also able to actually protect existing data. And all of that actually is not my work, it's actually Oracle's delivery of the AAWS framework that actually allows you to say that particular pieces of information should not be overwritten or deleted if the person had already entered it in the past. One thing that all institutions seem to actually be very interested in is the previous education. Sometimes we wonder why, but the intent is at least for previous education page to actually ask a person what the information, what the educational institutions he actually studied at before. This information goes into the staging area of Campus Solutions. If you're familiar with the AAWS framework, you might know that with the standard functionality, you always have to actually do the search match / definition of any previous education that you have in the form, in the staging area before you can actually post your applications towards admissions. We've actually extended the model there slightly and said, okay, we have a configuration that allows you to define schools as being quote, quote, unknown, and that means that you can actually define unknown schools to be picked up in the staging area, therefore moving the students already into the admissions process so that the administrator doesn't have to, let's say, do the creation or the search match and creation of new external organizations on the fly and actually with haste, because otherwise the admissions process doesn't start, because it actually is all in the staging area and stays there until all the evaluations have been done. In our case, we actually have the ability to say, okay, you just put them on unknown for a while, and then in the next weeks, if you actually feel that you would like to change it into the real name for the real university, you can also do that in admissions. Which also is a very big benefit, because in many cases, students are able to actually create a completely different university than actually is on their transcript. So in many cases, you can ask all this information, but then when you look at the transcripts, it actually turns out to be slightly different or completely different than what was actually entered. So for that reason, we actually always say, like, okay, if you have schools that actually are already known, fine. If the student actually is able to search for that, great. It's been doing this to me every day, all day long already, so I'm not going to be worried. I'm just going to continue speaking here. Once you, voila, here we go. So when you're actually entering your prior education, either you search from the list of the external organizations in the system, or you just actually enter your own school, and then you actually get the data in that you would like to get in for this previous education. Well, thanks. Test score configuration, both business scores as well as English scores are important in some cases. And I left it open on purpose here. We have the ability to actually enter multiple recommenders for people to actually have a recommendation. And those recommendations can either be a uploaded document. So in the case of, for instance, English schools, in many cases the high school teachers actually do 30, 40, 50, 60 recommendations because they got so many kids in their last grade. In those cases, these professors actually, or these teachers actually create documents, and they give the documents to the kids, and the kids actually upload the document instead of actually the professor constantly typing in a new recommendation for a new child. So we have the ability to actually upload a document. I would almost like to say anything. We'll just do a JPEG for a second. It's a beautiful picture, and it works much faster. But more importantly, let us also actually create a recommender here, so that we can at least you have to like yourself if you actually do Demings. So voila. Most important question is, what's the email address? That's this one. Voila. It should work. Great. Thank you. It's saved but not actually submitted yet. Of course, I would always like to say you can go back to your application form whenever you want and actually continue working on it, and everything that you had entered before will actually be there when you come back, of course. The recommender number 2 here is going to get an email at the moment that the student actually submits the application with a user account and a password to go into PeopleSoft to actually sign in and then do the recommendation online himself or herself. Simply because we don't know what institutions are going to ask, we have a question and answers page in the form that actually is purely and completely configurable by the institution. Think of common attribute framework, but then more user-friendly. I like Common Android Framework, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's slightly technical. Here, for the questions and answers, it's really actually something that any business user can actually create questions and define the type of answer that you would actually like to get, because in this case, it's twice a rich text editing answer that people can actually type in a longer text, but it's also actually a yes/no answer on are you a foreign student, yes or no. How many questions you actually ask is your choice. And due to Pankaj here, we're going to actually create a second page with also this kind of questions, but then more focused on personal data instead of on, let's say, application-related data, which I think is a really good idea. What's an application form if you can't actually have attachments, right? So we actually have attachments, and with the attachments comes the ability to actually have a help text with every application attachment that you have, so that you can actually define what you would like students to do in more detail, as well as any of these attachments is actually defined or can be defined to be shown or not shown to a specific applicant based on the data that they enter. Asking a US student if they actually know English is quite weird in many cases, I would say at least. If you're actually a foreign student, then it might be that you actually need to show a English test score document or anything like that. In those kinds of cases, we actually show more attachments based on the data that the student fills in. For instance, he says, I just did this TOEFL score, I did this TOEFL test, okay, fine, then let me show you, or show me then what the actual output was. So attachments, all of them are actually definable to be visible or not visible based on data that we enter in the form. Which makes it nice and flexible, because otherwise people actually start to stress out and say, I don't have this document. No, of course not, because we're not asking you to actually fill it in. But then it gets a bit ugly, so to say. Of course, overview. There's a reason why all these things actually are in these little boxes. It's actually because, one, we thought it actually looked nice. Secondly, the whole application form framework is also on your phone. I wouldn't recommend maybe doing the whole application on your phone, but it seems that there are quite some students who are actually doing the whole application on their phone. And then this fits nicely as a list of different boxes on your phone type, or on your phone to actually visualize what you've entered in the system till that date. Agreeing to the requirements of the institution. Of course, all this text is actually just my example for a particular CY2 university in this context, but of course that's all your own definition. Based on the templates, you can have different declarations actually asking for different things. And once you actually agree, then the road opens for you to actually start to finish your application. One of the things that is very important in at least many cases is application fees. Either application fees are paid online using a third-party payment provider, Ogone, Cashnet, well, there's quite a number here in the US as well, but we're utilizing either our own custom code to actually connect to third parties, or we're using Oracle's delivered third-party payment providing framework to have the connection. Other solution is actually to ask people to actually pay by bank, which is, I know, less common in the US, but it's very common in Europe to actually ask people to pay their invoice by bank. And if all is well, let's push on that for a second. We can actually read what the information is. Clicking that button at least told the system that we're actually deferring the payment for the application fees, but we would like the student to continue. All of that actually is standard functionality by Oracle to have that ability to say, okay, you have to pay before you can submit, or you can defer the payment and actually still submit your application. And sorry,
What's the amount of the application fee?
what are the amount? Where it is?
Yeah, I would expect it in that screen.
Should be there, isn't there? Then I think Raoul has actually, maybe, I'm going to say probably Raoul checked a box somewhere that actually says what the fee is. Normally, let me say this way, I know why I didn't actually show that, because actually Raoul had started the application. When you start an application that has an application fee, we normally prompt the student at that moment already that there will be an application fee attached to actually filling in an application, so that they can actually start to decide for themselves, am I actually going to pay the $90 and do the application, or am I going to stop here and now? Nothing, in my view, is more frustrating than having to fill it all in and then figure out the cost money. So, yes, sorry. Yeah, no, but as said, it is actually on this page. I know, so I built this page. So, but for some reason, it doesn't actually appear. But that's probably because I will check the box. Last step of the process, click on submit, great, and then you'll actually be done and your application will be submitted to the institution. And you are asked to go back to the home page, where you can then see that your application has now changed status and is now posted. Now, if it's really posted, for the student at least it's posted. It could well be stuck in staging now for search match, but in essence for the student it's now actually closed. The student is now able to actually view the application. Still the overview page remains open for him always. And as well, he can actually print the bank details. In many cases, students actually click submit and then think, oh, I forgot to actually print that nice document that actually told me what I need to do to actually get the payment in. So that is something that we actually have on this page as well as the actual ability to open the applicant self-service for students on the quote normal student application form side. So there's a very good question actually. So within the form the answer is no. And it's not because I don't want to, but it's because the AAWS framework doesn't allow any change anymore after the application has been submitted. And I didn't want to fiddle with that particular restriction that was in the framework as such. Within applicant self-service, there is at least a number of things they can change on personal data and so on. There have been conversations with institutions before already to say, why can't we just actually add more stuff as well? We haven't gotten around to build that up till this point. Also because in the end, yeah, I know it never rose as a real requirement. It became a discussion, and then after the discussion it just went, okay, fine, we'll leave it as it is. So whatever we can do in standard self-service for students, for applicants, we can do, let me see if this worked, should be. Thanks for all the Yahoo emails. See if I can make this a tiny bit bigger, because otherwise I can't even read it at least. So, yes, it's me, but yes, actually what you're looking at here is an email that's actually been sent to the recommender to tell him that he actually now has a new recommendation waiting for him, and please actually can you go into the system to do that application. The reason, and it's sometimes a question, sometimes a discussion, the reason that you actually see a quite lengthy URL there is because by now people are very scared when they see the word link and click on it and don't know what that actually means, that link. So we are actually writing out the full URL to make sure that people can see what they're clicking on when they're actually going to be clicking on that link. As you see, the user ID actually in this case is the email address. Technically it's not. It is a normal user ID, but we actually hook up the email address and tell the person to use the email address. Password is generated automatically, and if you do not actually fill in the application after 42 days, this is at least a requirement that, for instance, Glasgow, they actually wipe out your complete application automatically. So
the referee doesn't complete the applicant.
Then it's
wiped. So there's no go back and resubmit for us.
well, it's not my choice, right? So, and it's not actually something that is for all customers. At Glasgow, 42 days after that, you're gone. And if you do not have any other application, you're completely gone. If you have other applications running, only the application gets deleted. If you actually have no other applications, everything is gone. Yes. It's a GDPR thing, I would say. Well, it's not even a GDPR thing. Sorry, go ahead, stay.
They probably set some reminders during those 42 days, like, hey, you still haven't opened. No, they are very rigid.
This is the luxury of some universities is that they have a turnaround rate of 4 or 5 or so. So if you do not fill in, then 4 others will fill in for you. So yeah, I did actually ask the question state at the time as well. I was like, do we not actually create some reminder emails and stuff like that? Yeah, we've got enough applications. Kind of a weird, not very user-friendly, I would say, to an extent, but yeah. It's not because we can't, of course, guys. I mean, it's 3Cs or notification framework, whatever. It's absolutely not a problem to do it, but it's just it didn't happen. So let me copy this, and then I can actually go to a different browser to sign in so that we can actually stay signed in the other one. So I would say almost the same. Yeah, thank you. Voilà. We're on the same page actually technically. We're just actually showing different information because you're actually signing into Gap Solutions using another, what we call context. So with a different context comes different capabilities on this particular same page. You are not able to create a new user account because we don't want recommenders to create a new user account because then we don't know who they are anymore. So we only want to sign in with the recommender email address that we gave them so that we are absolutely sure that they're going to sign in and be connected to the students that they actually were recommending for. So if I grab the email address and the password here. Yes, nice little message indicating that your personal data will be used. Another GDPR related thing that we have to do. If you say no, then you're not going to get in. That's it, simple. And now you're actually on the recommender homepage where you actually can see the applicants that are actually asking for you for a recommendation. Your own personal details, as far as they are available to us, are also shown. You can even edit those e-details if you like, so that you actually can change your email address or anything like that if you want to. And of course, very important, that's why you're there, you actually are able to do a recommendation for the student. So questions are asked to the recommender to fill in, and these are of course configurable as well by the institution on the basis of different templates that you might want to use for those recommendations. Recommender can save them, recommender can submit them. When they are submitted by the recommender, the student gets informed over the fact that the recommender has submitted the application questions. So, and then after, so technically speaking, the applicant is already an applicant by the time they submit their application. But from a business process point of view, in these kinds of cases, people wait until the recommenders have all filled in their recommendations, and then the process continues to evaluate the applicant based on the recommendations as well as the other data that they have available. So, but at least the applicant knows the moment that the recommender finally, or maybe quickly, enters the recommendation questions on this page. It's not configured, or let's say the checkbox is off literally, but there's also the ability for the recommender at this point in time to say, actually, I already wrote the whole story, so I'll just actually upload a document here, and then that recommendation becomes an attachment again, just as it would be in the application form of the student. Other capabilities are not available for now for recommenders, simply because nobody asked us. Not sure if they would need anything else, but in essence, this is what they get. Now, just to grab you, where was I going? I was going here. Now, our applicants that actually are applicants and have submitted their application Allee. Try it again. Copy paste still is difficult. Hello. I changed the password twice today already, but it doesn't seem to be listening to me. No, I'm not even going to go that way. I'm just going to go the other way around. No problem. Let me just do this. Magic. I'm just actually signing into the application form as a student who's already actually posted an application earlier to be able to actually go to the maintain applications page in applicant self-service, where the applicant can then utilize the functionality available for applicants in regards to activity guides that they have to fill in, checklist items they have to do, attachments they have to bring, and of course, have an overview of their admissions application that they have, and see the status. I'm not sure if you're using this functionality or not, but it's actually quite nice functionality. It works quite well, and it has a quite interesting set of options as well related to making requests like withdrawing your application, changing your program and plan, deferring to a next date, and so on. It's quite, it works quite well, and we actually use it a lot. The only thing we actually were missing was the ability for students to actually properly upload a document again, and that document then actually referring back to the administrator to be reassigned or re-evaluated once it was actually created. Now, I just sign in as me for a moment here. Yes, there are quicker ways to do this, but so yes, let's open that. So what we created for, it's a bit large, of course, when it's so, make it a bit smaller, otherwise it's really difficult to read. And I'll open it in the next page. Oh, please, why is there no configuration for that? Okay, so the intent of the related content on this page actually is to enable us to have the 3 C's related to the specific application on one page in the same application maintenance page as the rest of the application information is. So we've created a page that actually puts all the 3C data related to an application in a page. And I wish that somebody would have checked the box to say that we could actually open it in a new... Pardon? What's that, sorry? Oh, bloody, there it is. Excuse me. You can see how well I am as an administrator, right? It is actually, I should stay in my consultancy role here. So, thank you, Elmar. And everybody else thinking, Ernst, can you not see this? Yeah. Okay. No, so the 3 C's actually related to this particular application are on this page. And as you can see, for the checklist items, we're actually making a checklist that consists of tasks that the student has to do, plus the attachments that he's actually brought to us, so that we can actually validate or evaluate and validate the documents that he's actually brought to us, so that we can actually then either accept them or return them to the student. And if they're returned to the student, then in that case the student will actually get a notification saying that there is a particular attachment that has been refused, quote, quote, or returned to the student. And then he's being asked via notification framework to go into applicant self-service and then upload a new version of the document. So the moment that the person actually clicks on that return button because for some reason they didn't like the photo that was actually attached to the application, then when we go back to the applicant now, we refresh the page here for a moment, then normally, then when I actually go into here and open that, should be there. Please tell me it's there. I love demos. Did I do it wrong? Oh, keep your glasses on, Ernst. Yes, fine. Voila, that's better. Sorry, I chose the wrong action. So only the returned status actually returns it to the applicant. And now, as you can see, on the to-do list of the applicant is an item called photo, whereby the student now has the ability in applicant self-service to upload a new photo. And once this photo is uploaded, which is all standard functionality, trust me when I say I did not build this page, because everybody that actually uses this page thinks, where is my attachment gone? But this is the way Oracle has actually delivered this, so we left it as is. But now that it actually is done, the to-do is from the to-do list, and if we now go back to this page and actually refresh the maintain applications, and go back to our applicant data page, we'll see that in here the checklist item has now been updated. And of course the administrator is normally informed via a, if you look well at the bottom here, it now says re-uploaded, which actually means that the administrator has now the ability to validate the new attachment that actually has been brought in by the student. And normally we don't, of course, go into every single application to check if something has changed, but we have a nice work center with different pagelets, with queries, indicating everything that actually has been altered since the last time that the person actually did some, let's say, that visualizes different steps in the process, like applicants with missing documents, applicants with re-uploaded documents, people that are actually admitted, people that are actually wanting to change or defer or withdraw from the application. So all of those kinds of statuses become little pagelets in the work center with a query output that actually can be clicked on, and then the person, the administrator gets into these particular elements, into these particular pages to, to do their work, whatever they are, the student actually asked them to do. So,
and student that you want is uploaded, and we can change it, or can you only change it when it's returned?
you can only change it when it's returned, but that's a choice.
Yeah, because you wouldn't want to have it changed when it's completed.
No, exactly. So from a business process point of view, the intent that at least up till now everybody has had is, okay, they're not able to change anything unless we ask them to. Because otherwise you actually validate something at 1 o'clock, they actually then upload something else at 2 o'clock, and then you still don't know what they did. Sorry, yes?
Now, do they have the ability to change it up until they submit?
Yes.
So
Within
they
the
can go back
form
and
itself,
change their photo 4 times, as long as they
they
have
can
the
do whatever they
design.
like.
Okay.
as long as it's not submitted, it's all actually up to them. Once it's submitted, it actually becomes a process of, okay, we allow you as a student to do particular uploads up to a particular point. I'm not sure if you were if any of you was in the session with Steve Grant this afternoon. It's been a long wish, or a long time wish for us to actually have a better upload functionality in general for documents and that kind of stuff for students. And in the end, we built something ourselves around documents in general, where normally students can actually then in self-service also upload extra documents and actually pull other reports and communications from PeopleSoft straight from that particular document module. But for the purpose of the process, most institutions actually say, okay, only when we actually tell you that it's returned, we'll actually let you change it on your end. Then it's actually flipping back to re-upload it on our end. We'll actually check it. If it's actually okay, then we'll complete it. Once all of the 4 items are completed, checklist gets closed, process continues, student gets picked up, admitted, or whatever else is the next stage that you would like to have for it. Okay, sorry. I was going to say, thank you.
I wanted to do this.
No, please.
Any questions? Or?
Yes, please. Oh, sorry, guys. You have to shout at me, otherwise I'm going to keep babbling until the time is up. So.
Anything you want to say about this?
No. The fact that the reason that we chose is because of our staying because we already have a set of developers who's managing on PeopleSoft. We did try to look for the application which is outside the PeopleSoft, and then we are stuck with hiring somebody to manage that. So that was the whole reason to, if you have this is already in PeopleSoft, we have already resources there, the knowledge in-house, so it makes it much easier for that. And the best part of AAWS is we have other application system which has to go through file upload process and all that. This one, student submits, you get application record, that whole cycle. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're very common to actually almost completely automate the admissions process. Almost everything that we do normally at institutions is run based on queries and processes that actually assign a checklist, update statuses. Everything actually is done using PopSelect. And the manual interaction for the whole admissions process is mainly actually this little page at the bottom here where people visualize, or sorry, evaluate, the attachments that people actually bring in. Most of the other steps of the whole process are actually automated.
The recommenders, they're getting an ID, an Apple ID created.
No, it depends on what you want.
So what are the options?
Well, the options is yes and no. So, no, sorry, thank you, Alex. It's a very good question. No, please, actually, it's a very good question. There's nothing wrong with it. No, sorry, I was already too fast with file. That's all right. No, so depending on what you actually give the new user registration framework, it will either create an Apple ID for the person or not. You can absolutely use new user registration without actually having an applet being created at the back end of it. Up till now, institutions have always chosen to actually create an Apple ID.
Is that pretty common in the U.S.? Is that what you see? What's that?
Canada, so.
far away from the U.S.
Very different. But no, we're looking at trying to see what we're doing because we've got our own solution that's past useful life. So this is something that's
That was a common story.
Close to what we have to look at doing, and we talk about using Deliver more. This is something.
And that's our whole philosophy, really, on anything we build. We try to use Deliver.
Now, when you go in the application, the whole list of what you're required to complete changes with each program you select, or like we have programs where you need 2 referees, one you need 3 referees, one you need a educational reference and a career reference, one you need this, and like there's a whole host of different scenarios that you may need. So,
Pankaj, is that like saying in credentials different?
Yeah, so we also have about 18 programs, and so there is a piece of core application which calculates what all the information has to be there. The 4 view pages that everybody kind of gets complicated, and then there is there are a few other program level questions. everybody has. Some want to know the ideal nursing or ideal nurse. Some want to know about all your certifications for all the previous programs or whatever you're doing. So that's a requirement for it. So there are different things that we ask applicants to approve or give different questions. And we have a whole new credentials. That's a different group completely. And then we have their
So, and I will add to that in the sense that when I spoke about templates earlier, I just actually pulled one up. In the end, the templates are all linked to a piece of academic structure. And every template has all the definitions as far as how many pages, how many questions, what extra questions, what recommended questions, how many recommenders, what attachments on which pages, what attachments are required, and so on and so on and so on and so on. But that whole, let's say the whole application form is steered or linked to an applicant based on what he chooses. And in this case, we've got a template that actually is only valid for people who are doing an undergraduate program called BSc MA. But we could also say, okay, it's actually for BSc MA, but only if it's that plan, that sub-plan, that campus, etc. Or, let's say, you could drop anything in and out if you want to. In the end, it's actually, the intent is to have there's a plus sign at the end, you can't see it yet, but there's a plus sign there. So you can add very specifically which particular students or applicants should actually be getting which questions. And then the whole thing is also effective dated, so if, as you do, seemingly, you actually tend to ask different questions over time, we actually say, okay, if you want to have new questions for a new cohort coming in, you just actually create a new effective date. It actually then looks at the start date of your program, checks the last setup that actually is applicable to that, and then actually moves on from there. And just to give you a tiny peek behind the scenes here, this is let's not do this page, let's do the next page, a bit more interesting. So every page that we show the applicant is actually shown here as a page where you can actually define the title, you can define the tab title, you can define what icon it is, you can define the instruction text, and then all the fields that are technically on the page, you can actually say that they're either required, they're visible, you can update their label, you can update the help text, which is a float over help text. If you mouse over the particular text, you can have a placeholder text for that field, and very importantly, you can also indicate any area attributes that you would like. And if you're not familiar with the word area here, it's not about the font, it's accessibility permissions. So what you actually put in here are attributes which are relevant. I'm not sure if this page has any, but if there are specific fields which you have accessibility requirements for, you can actually add those attributes in there to actually be shown for people who have a screen reader and those kinds of things. Yeah, and then there's a lot of extra stuff that you actually have for this particular template. And the interesting thing is for us was we built this and people at first said, we don't need that, we have our own application form. Trust me, they have 35 by now. I mean, all my clients have between 20 and 40 templates. And because there is a little button somewhere that says copy, it's very easy to create the next one, change 2 labels, and then you have 2 applications. It makes change management is a lot simpler because everybody can have what they want. And in the end, as long as you actually fill in the fields which are technically required in PeopleSoft, it's all fine. There's lots of extra questions that were asked that actually are extensions by us, and there's lots of information that is asked that actually is standard vanilla functionality. It all lands in the same area. All the extra questions that we ask, not just the configurable ones, but also simply complete tables, are all actually shown as related content in the application maintenance pages normally, as well as on the personal side, so that there's no impact on existing code, but we do actually have a lot of extra stuff that actually our people have been asking over the years, and we'll just keep adding to it, so to say. Because in the end, it's a matter of a checkbox. to say that a particular field should be shown or not shown, so to say. So it's easy enough to say that this particular field is no longer visible. Once you check it, it's for that template no longer visible. And so,
I think it worked.
yeah. Guys, if you actually, I mean, as Pankaj knows and others know as well, there's quite a lot of setup actually in this whole thing that you can do yourself with the intent as well as to say that you actually want functional people to be able to actually do a lot of things on the front end of the system. More than happy to talk about it in detail. Spent my life building it, so know about how it works. But yeah, I hope this gave you an insight into the whole framework and the way it actually works. And I hope you, like it.
Thanks,
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.